Oh hey, I didn't see you there. Just about to get started with our geometry lesson. Today we're doing 10.6, circles in the coordinate plane. I printed out the PowerPoint, work the problems with me. Now let's get started.
It's Virtual Math with Mr. Ferrara.
Hey, what's up everybody? Today we're going to be doing section 10.6, circles in the coordinate plane. There's only one fact that you need to know for this section, and that's the equation for the circle. Now the equation of the circle uses the center at h comma k, taking the place of actual numbers, and the radius of r. So again, the x-coordinate is labeled by the h variable, and the y-coordinate is labeled by the k-coordinate. The radius is the distance from the center to the edge of the circle. The formula is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared, and that equals r squared. It's a variation of the distance formula. It's a variation of the Pythagorean theorem as well. The x and the y stand for all the possible points on the circumference of the circle. The h and the k are the one point, the center, and the r squared is the radius squared. Again, the x and the y stand for any possible point along the circumference of the circle. We'll look at some examples to explain this further. All right, let's look at some examples for these circles. Just a reminder that the formula is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. So I'm looking at this one and it somewhat fits that equation. X minus h squared, so that means R4 is our h. However, y minus k squared, this has a plus sign. Well, in order to turn that minus sign in the equation into a plus sign, that means only one thing, that this 2 had to be a negative in order for it to turn into a plus sign. Now the radius is not 25. In the formula, that's r squared. So if r squared is 25, that means that the radius is 5. We always take the square root of whatever's in the equation in order to turn it into the radius. Now example 2 says, what is the equation of a circle whose center is at -8, 1 and has a radius of the square root of 5? I'm going to write out the equation first. X minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. Well, my center is -8, 1, so I plug that into the formula. X minus -8 squared plus y minus 1 squared equals the square root of 5 for the radius squared. So now it's just time to clean that up. Minus a negative becomes x plus 8 squared plus y minus 1 stays that way. And the square root of 5 squared, is just the regular number 5. There's your equation for the circle for example 2. Now example 3 already gives me the graph of a circle, so I need to find out two things. I need to know the center and I need to know the radius. Well, the center looks like it's right here at 0, 0. That's the center. And the radius is 1, 2, 3, 4, or I could have gone up 4, left 4, down 4, but either way the radius is 4. Well, let's make an equation out of that. X minus 0 squared plus y minus 0 squared equals r squared. Now it's just time to clean that up. X minus 0 is just x squared. Y minus 0 is just y squared. And 4 squared is 16. So the equation for that circle centered at the origin is x squared plus y squared equals 16. Now example 4 and 5 use the circle formula in order to find radiuses. Now the x and the y in the formula stand for all the possible points that are on the circumference of that circle. The h and the k obviously stand for the center, one specific point. but the x and y stand for all of the possible points that are on the circumference of that circle. So what is the equation of the circle that has a center of 5, 8, and has one point that passes through -15, -13? Well, let's write the equation first. The one thing I'm missing is the radius. X minus 5 squared plus y minus 8 squared, and I don't know what the radius is. So that's about as far as I can get if they didn't give me the -15, -13. But since they did give me that point, that's one point that's on the circle. That's an HY that would work in this equation. So I'm going to plug it in. -15 minus 5 squared plus -13 minus 8 squared, and that equals r squared. Now it's time to just do some math. -15 minus 5 is -20 squared. -13 minus 8 is -21 squared, and that equals r squared. -20 squared is 400. -21 squared is 441, and that equals r squared. Add those two up, we get 841 equals r squared. Well, if I wanted to know what the radius was, I would square root that, and I'd find out that the radius is 29, but we actually don't even need that 29 in our answer. The answer is the equation x minus 5 squared plus y minus 8 squared, and then r squared, we knew from before, was 841. This is the answer. That's the equation of the circle that has a center at 5, 8 and goes through this point, -15, -13. There's the equation. All right, the last problem is similar, very similar, except they give us two endpoints for the diameter. Well, the diameter stretches all the way across the circle, so halfway across the circle would be the center. So in other words, I need to find the midpoint between these two. The midpoint is you add up your x's, -3 and 5, divide by 2. Add up your x's, add up your y's, divide by 2. -3 plus 5 is 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 6 plus 12 is 18. 18 divided by 2 is 9. The center of the circle is 1, 9. Well, what I don't know is the radius. I need to calculate that, same way we did before. Let's plug this information into the formula. X minus 1 squared plus y minus 9 squared equals r squared. I don't know what the radius is. Now I have options here. I know 2 points that are on the circumference of the circle. I only need one. I'm going to pick the one that does not have any negatives. So I'm going to plug it in. 5 minus 1 squared plus 12 minus 9 squared, and that equals r squared. 5 minus 1 is 4 squared. 12 minus 9 is 3 squared, and that equals r squared. You should notice this looks like a Pythagorean triple. 4 squared is 16, 3 squared is 9, that equals r squared. So I know that r squared is 25. Now if I wanted the radius, if I asked you how big the radius was the square root of 25, which is 5. That's not required for this problem. I want to know what the equation is. The equation is x minus 1 squared plus y minus 9 squared equals r squared. Well, r squared is 25. So there's the equation of that circle. The center is at 1, 9, which we calculated by finding the midpoint between those two endpoints. And the radius is 5 in the formula 25 using the points they gave us. If you have any questions on today's assignment, please feel free to Schoology message me, email me, call the Google helpline, or ask your questions during our next live conference. Till next time, bye.